National Marine Sanctuary Foundation in support of our Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. Today I'm coming to you from Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is right near Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary is 842 square miles of a marine protected area in Massachusetts Bay that protects shipwrecks to open up a window into maritime history. It protects 600 marine species, including 17 marine mammals, as well as many other important resources in our ocean. So what brings us here today is a NOAA-funded grant of sanctuary exploration. NOAA awarded $3.5 million to 3 institutions: Ocean Exploration Trust, the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, to do research using state-of-the-art marine technologies in the deep seas of our national marine sanctuaries. Today, we are on the banks of Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and Marine Imaging Technologies to conduct research this summer as well as in the fall that we will bring to you live through technology like Facebook Live that we're doing right now, as well as different ways of connecting live in September. So to learn a little bit more about what they did today out in Massachusetts Bay, we have staff from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and Marine Imaging Technologies with us that we are going to speak to. So I'd love for you to, if you're tuning in live, to submit your questions in the comments feed, and we'll try to get them addressed by our scientists and researchers on the team. So let's head on over to the science staff. Hello.
Hi, Anna.
So this is the principal investigator on the team. She is from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Kirsten Meyer-Kaiser. And she is also the biology-focused researcher on this team as well. She's going to talk to us a little bit about an expedition overview of what brought us to Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary and what we did.
So we're an interdisciplinary team interested in studying marine heritage sites from archaeological and biological perspectives using advanced technology. And so the objective of our project is to document baseline characterizations in some cases of new wrecks, and in other cases we're going back to wrecks that have previously been visited for either more in-depth documentation and seeing how they've changed over time. So this week we've been looking at the shipwreck Portland. This was a steamship that sunk in 1898, and we actually were getting some really good ROV footage from that wreck today.
ROV, could you break down that acronym for us?
Yes, remotely operated vehicle.
Awesome.
It's an underwater robot that has a tether back to the ship, so we basically drive it using an operating box, and it can show us what's on the wreck below water.
That sounds awesome. So it's our way of getting deep in the sea?
Absolutely. Deeper than humans are able to scuba dive.
Awesome. So we have a question?
We have a question from the audience. We have a question from Great Lakes Divers who wants to know how deep the shipwreck Portland is.
Portland is at about 450 feet. So
Awesome.
I think maybe super skilled technical divers might be able to do it, but the ROV is the better way for us to go.
Great. And so now I think is a great time to bring in the archaeology lead, Calvin Myers, who focuses on maritime archaeology and has a wealth of knowledge on the Portland. If we're already getting questions on that, I think it's a great time to hear about the significance of shipwrecks like the Portland.
I'd love to, but first I want to give a shout out to Great Lake Divers. I heard it's a great company over in Alpena, Michigan, is that right?
Yes, that's
All
where I
right.
learned to scuba dive as well. I can second that.
Well, fantastic, and I know Thunder Bay has some amazing shipwrecks over there that they could tell you a lot of their history. Here in Stellwagen Bank, the sanctuary has what's known as the Titanic of the New England, the steamship Portland, which sank, as Kristen said, in 1898 with almost 200 passengers aboard. And it was discovered in 2002 by some avocational ROV specialists and remote sensing specialists, and since that time has been visited, and some sanctuary archaeologists have done some wonderful research on that. But it's been almost 10 years since anyone has gone back, and it's in a heavily fishing area where we're going back and to take a look at any kind of cultural formation that's nets and on there. And what's really exciting about this is that from that tragic day in 1898 where 200 passengers were coming home from Thanksgiving, it sank on November 26th. And you can imagine grandmothers and grandkids just trying to get back to Portland, Maine, or maybe even going to visit grandparents up there, and they didn't make that. And so that story is harrowing and it was tragic, and we have the very important responsibility to go back and continue that story. So one of the great things about maritime archaeology is it allows us to tell these stories by looking at what was remains. And as I said, we're coming back near almost 10 years since the last project with some new technology, and we're really excited about seeing what's happened to the site and also helping the sanctuary develop more management goals and looking to a stewardship type of future.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a really great human connection that I see there that you're sharing about the Portland.
Absolutely.
And we have further biology connections that you were mentioning with your island-like research, correct?
Yeah, so I'm a marine biologist, and my research focuses on island-like habitats. So shipwrecks are one example of that because they're usually surrounded by mud or sand, so it's this solid object in the middle of a muddy plain. And so shipwrecks are particularly interesting because by definition they're not supposed to be there. So any biological colonization that happens on a shipwreck may have been by mistake, or it's probably representing something that went too far away from home, and without the shipwreck there may not have been able to find another habitat, but the ship is there to kind of provide a habitat in a place that there's not supposed to be one.
Right. That's really unique.
Yeah, I think so.
Very unique research. Another question coming from Facebook.
Yeah, what kind of animals do you see on a shipwreck?
So a lot of the shipwrecks in the North Atlantic that I've been able to lay eyes on have this same species of anemone. It's called Metridium senile. It's commonly known as the plumose anemone. So we actually saw a couple individuals of that on the Portland today. That was pretty exciting for me. The anemones tend to be pretty common on shipwrecks. I'm kind of suspecting that there's something about their life cycle that allows them to disperse out to those island-like sites. You also typically see a lot of fish gathered around the wrecks. They like the structure. You can get crabs and shrimps and lots of sea stars. Sea stars seem to be pretty common on the wrecks.
That's awesome. So you mentioned today you saw some sea anemones. Is there anything else of significance you found today?
Today, yeah, we saw a couple of those Metridium sea anemones. There were a couple of other species that I can't identify by eye. I'll have to collect a specimen for that. So I would say probably 3 different sea anemone species. And the thing that really surprised me that we saw today were some sponges. So sponges, typically speaking, have a really short larval phase in their life history. Larvae are like a caterpillar and butterfly. So the larval phase is when they are carried away by the current and can disperse to new habitats. So a species that has a short larval phase, you wouldn't expect to make it very far away from their parents. But nevertheless, there were some sponges on the wreck today, and I'm really looking forward to figuring out how they got there.
Right. And all of these living species, to be reminded, are 450 feet at deep in the middle of Massachusetts Bay. That's incredible. Awesome. And so we have another Facebook Live question.
We have a question from Plastics Float, who wants to know, is there evidence of marine debris on the shipwreck site?
Absolutely. And I think Calvin is better to answer that
Yeah,
question.
there's actually, we saw, as we were finishing off the dive today, a plastic bag. I think it had a smiley face. We'll have to go back through the footage and actually see if we can identify the company, but there was, at 450 feet, we saw a plastic bag down there, I believe. In addition, of course, there's a lot of fish nets, a lot of trawling gear that's covering. We noticed, based on what happened about 10 years ago on that project, we think we have even more coverage with some of the fishing gear, especially along the stern at the bottom and then draping across the bow. So it's a lot of impacts that happen, and even modern plastics make it down onto the site eventually.
And then to maybe go from a depressing note to a more exciting note, did you find anything significant for your research today?
Yeah, it's a great, being a maritime archaeologist is fantastic because you're out on the water and you're working with technology and you have all this history literally below you, and for me, it's the first time I've gotten to see the stern of the vessel, and the way the vessel was constructed. We call it a fantail. It's like a big U, a very graceful, beautiful ship line, and as the ROV, and you can imagine you're just kind of looking through a very narrow, almost like a monocle, you know, a porthole almost, a porthole into history, and you're coming around this curve, and you just see the features coming down in towards the rudder, and it's, you know, one of those moments that you realize that you're looking at the remnants of people's last moments. So you talk about the history, you talk about the respect, but also that sense of discovery and that connection to the past. That one of the things that's lovely in Massachusetts, and maybe you get a chance to see this, is that maritime history surrounds us, literally where we're standing. In fact, there's a tall ship that just came over to our right that celebrates 18th, 19th century schooners. And tall ships, and people just got off who are riding that to get a sense of history, and we have a chance to go and tell those stories. So one of the wonderful things about living here and working with Stellwagen is a sense of just being surrounded by maritime heritage and trying to give back. So yeah, there was a lot of great discoveries, and I'm excited to get back and do the post-processing to see the footage and to go through it. I bet there's even more there.
And we're right outside Maritime Gloucester as well, which has an exhibit on Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and it highlights so much of the maritime history that's just in the Gloucester area.
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
so much maritime right here, as you probably are aware of, from the fishing industry as well as the shipbuilding and ship construction.
Right. Another question.
We have a question from Greg on Facebook asking whether teachers and schools can access the data, photos, and history discovered in your research, and whether they can participate via webinars.
Wonderful question. That is.
Awesome.
I think I'm going to turn this over to Hannah.
So a primary focus of doing sanctuary exploration is to create education materials from this. So the footage that we're collecting will be available, as well as photogrammetry, which is going to be a 3D model of the shipwreck Portland. So those are resources that are going to be created. In September, we're going to be going live the week of September 16th. So those will be opportunities like webinars to connect and ask questions on a different platform than Facebook Live, but stay tuned for more information on that. We're in the process of getting that together, but definitely geared towards education. Yeah, so going back to the research, what's the game plan for the rest of the summer and then on to September?
So our goals this year are primarily focused on documenting the Portland, both the parts of the shipwreck that had not been viewed before and the parts that had been viewed before, to document those changes over time. Another wreck that we're hoping to get to document this summer is the Palmer and the Prairie. And those are two coal schooners that are also in Stellwagen Bank. So those are our primary goals for now. We'll be conducting sampling on the Portland the rest of this week, and weather permitting, probably be out next week as well.
Great.
And then in September we'll have continued investigations with the telepresence broadcasts.
That sounds great. Yeah. So let's head on over. We've been talking about all this imaging that we're collecting and the B-roll and getting down to these depths, but you probably are interested in seeing how they're doing this. So let's go take a look at the Dawn Treader. So here we have the Dawn Treader research vessel for this operation, and on board we have staff from Marine Imaging Technologies that would like to talk to us about their technologies they're using.
Hello.
Welcome to Facebook Live.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I'm Evan.
I'm Hannah. Nice to meet you too. Our first interaction is live on Facebook. This is great. But you are the man in charge of the marine technology for this operation.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we're providing, doing the ROVs, the cameras, sort of the modeling, trying to bring everything that we have to bear in a couple of different situations. So we're trying to make the most of the summer and a budget, working off a small vessel with some just different techniques trying to work out there, and then we're going to go back out in September with the big ship. and do a big a couple of days of live events. But in the meantime, what we're trying to do is get out and capture enough footage to be able to build a reasonably good model of the shipwreck, which is sort of becoming a de facto standard for archaeological work nowadays, especially underwater and probably in air. It's a challenging place.
Model.
Yes. And we've learned it's a very challenging place to operate. There's a number of rules that you have to sort of follow within the sanctuary. So we had to stay within that, and then which just made some of our early anchoring plans a little bit difficult. And we've kind of got that honed in, and now we finally are getting on the wreck, and it is just net covered like nothing we've seen before. It's incredibly. We call them in the diving world. We call them billowing nets of death, because that's what they are to us. But
and to the ROV.
And to the ROV, yeah. The ROV is it can get hung up way too easily, and especially it's a 350 pound vehicle, so it's still small, which means that it doesn't have a ton of power to it. And when you're when you're working on a tether and in a big current, which we are, it just tends to get jerked around a lot. So you have to be really cognizant of where the nets are and where all the danger spots are.
Could we take a look at it and show our Facebook Live viewers?
Well, we're in the middle of doing some
maintenance.
Yeah, we're sort of upping the power a little bit right now. So we've got part of the power bottle out, but she's sort of based around. That's Mike Skoronsky. That's one of the lead engineers and designers of the vehicle. But basically, it's centered around two big camera systems. Those two tubes, and we've got a couple of 4Ks, a 45 megapixel still camera, 20,000 lumens of light, which sounds like a lot, but it's never enough. And also, like, for good imagery, and this is one of the challenges here, for good imagery, you really want separation from the cameras. You want your lights as far away from the camera as you can possibly get them, so that you're effectively out getting, I think, coined a term called shooting through the dark. You don't want to light the water column, because no matter where you are, there's always stuff in the water column, right? There's that particulate, and that's normally our goal. We have these big, beautiful light arms on there, but in the knot and a half current, they're just sails. So we have to tuck them in pretty tight on here, and we've been adding things and tweaking things as we get out there to try to make it more efficient and stuff like that. Yeah.
And does it have a name? So ROV is remotely operated vehicle, but I heard that this one might have a name.
Yeah, this one, this is called Pixel. Pixel.
Any reason for the name Pixel?
No, we sort of do a lot of pixel counting when we build cameras and stuff like that. So we wanted it to be high resolution, and and then about a week after that, they came out with, I think it was the Google phone Pixel. So, but anyway.
You the name first.
Exactly.
Very cool. Awesome.
How deep can Pixel go?
Pixel, as she is right now, can do 1,000 feet, but we don't really have, we're not set up tether-wise for that. And, generally speaking, 600-700 is what we tend to run her to. But, it's just a little, it's a small vehicle with reasonably good thrust, but it is still a small vehicle. So when you get deep and you get into currents and you're trying to pull a big tether or a long tether, that gets tough. So what we really are trying to do is keep it to a relatively small, maybe a 200-foot watch circle. So we send the tether down with a big clump weight or a depressor, so that we're trying to disassociate the boat movement from the ROV, so that all the ROV has to do is deal with that 200-foot of tether in the water. 200 foot you can handle no problem, even in this current. But when the boat is several hundred feet away, then you have to pull. It starts to stack up very quickly.
So does the clump weight run from the boat down the tether, and then the ROV can operate around the clump? Okay,
exactly.
That's great.
So similar. I mean, I think you guys have seen, and probably your audience has seen, Ballard's vehicle. The big ROVs and stuff like that.
Argus and Hercules.
Yes, thank
you.
What is it? Argus is the depressor, right? And Hercules is so it's the same sort of principle, except a lot less sophisticated. Argus would sit up above, and that just sits on a line. Now it's able to thrust around a little bit and do some lighting and auxiliary stuff, but it's the same principle. We want to disassociate as much as we can on a small package the motion of the boat from the ROV.
A lot of our audience tends to be students
Oh, cool.
who do mate ROV competitions.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm sure that they would find that fascinating, that instead of having 2 ROVs, you're using the clump weight. That's
Well,
very innovative.
And what's kind of cool is in September we will have 2 ROVs, and we'll probably have 2 clump weights, judging by the currents out here. So, and that, because that is one of the, ideally, you know, if you can do 2 vehicles, I mean, there's logistics, subsea, like the subsea ballet of trying to avoid nets, not wrap tethers, and not wrap both the ROVs up inside the net. It's going to be interesting, but fun.
That's an encouragement to stay tuned in September. Promotion right there. See how the 2 ROVs work.
Yeah, that's a great one. Hopefully well.
Great.
So, right.
Any other technologies that are critical to operations?
Well, we're keeping this we're keeping this portion pretty much, you know, sort of low tech, if you will. What usually you would like to use in this sort of thing is what's called a USBL, and that is essentially a location beacon. So you can tell where the boat is, where the shipwreck is, where the ROV is, and where your clump weight or your depressor is. And that enables you to really kind of hone in, but they're also really expensive. And so we have one set aside for the September dates because you have to have it when you're operating on a ship that has dynamic positioning, which the RV Connecticut has. But this, we're sitting on a 2-point anchor.
Okay.
And so we shift around a little bit, but so our low-tech approach is essentially following down the clump line, and or depending on conditions, following down a descent line, things like that. But a USBL is going to be pretty key. We may end up having some lasers on there. We'll be doing multi-beam. So right now we're sort of still exploring the, we're re-exploring sites that are known. Portland, I mean, I'm sure you guys have been hearing about, is a very famous wreck up here and an important historical and cultural site. So, but no one's been out there for 15 years or so, or 10 years, excuse me. And even in the limited time we've been there, we've noticed huge changes. And none of us were even there originally. This is just from reading the archaeological report and watching some of the video. So, I mean, that's pretty exciting. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but anyway, we're technology.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And we already had questions about some of the resources that might be available for the public. So it's exciting that we're collecting the footage now and the 3D model that may be available in the fall as well. It's super
Absolutely.
exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, the public is thrilled. Yeah, do we have any more questions coming in from Facebook? All right. Well, then I guess now's a great time to promote that we will be coming to you live again in September, the week of September 16th. There'll be 3 telepresence-enabled days, which means live streaming from the RV Connecticut. You'll get to see Pixel in action as well as some of the footage that's collected this summer. So be sure to stay tuned and we'll connect with you again in September. Coming to you live from Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and Marine Imaging Technologies. Thank you.